Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and TechAdvice.life video interview. I'm joined today by Terry Maiolo. He's the Vice President and General Manager for Asia Pacific at OVHcloud, a global player and leading European cloud provider operating over 450,000 servers within 42 data centers across 4 continents to reach 1.6 million customers in over 140 countries. Phew! Terry, that's big. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex. Glad that we could host you today as we get ready to launch to the public this brand new data centre that we've got here in Sydney. So hope you enjoyed the tour. I'm looking forward to what we've got to talk about.
Sure. Well, look, we'll discuss all of that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. And thank you for taking the time to join me for this video interview afterwards. Now, as you said, we're here to talk about the new data center, and it's got some very unique advantages. But before we get to this specific announcement, what are the top 3 advantages that sets OVHcloud apart from the rest of the market?
So there's several, as you mentioned. First would be our approach to sustainability, and that is anchored at a couple of points. One is the way that we cool our servers, not our data centers. As we get through this chat, you'll learn that what we do is actually cool the components that generate the heat rather than entire rooms, and that leads to greater efficiencies around power usage, water usage, and ultimately carbon emissions. The second point is the way that we own our entire industrial cycle. Mm-hmm. We build many components. Many of those are proprietary components. This type of technology is quite unique, or not quite unique, it is very unique to OVHcloud. And we assemble our servers and we then rack and move all of those different servers to the data centers around the world. But then there is a vertical model where when those servers have finished with their first life, we disassemble them ourselves. Some components will get a second, and over time, perhaps a third life. What remains will be recycled rather than reused, as I've already mentioned. And in fact, we are on target to be at zero landfill by 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a big believer in technology delivering on these promises of lower power usage, of renewable energy, of recycling the precious metals within all of these motherboards. So it's great to see a company that's living by that and actually achieving it.
Thank you. Look, it is, it's part of our ethos. So it's something that we've been doing at scale since 2003. So it's not something recent that we've jumped on as pressure comes from governments and all other areas to be responsible about that. But also, I should probably mention that that third point, that another key differentiator for us is the way that we treat our customers' data and ultimately their customers' data. Yeah. And that's certainly been a significant point here in Australia over the last couple of years. So being a French organisation based in Europe, and we hold ourselves to the privacy data regulation, or GDPR, which is probably the highest standard set globally. Mm-hmm. There in Europe, and that's the standard that we hold ourselves to. So the data remains the customer's data. We don't monetize any of that data, and the fact that we operate through so many data centers means that our customers can engage and operate in all of these different sites, and therefore contain the movement of that data. It doesn't need to move outside of zones, etc.
Yeah, data sovereignty is a huge issue in this decade.
Absolutely, yes, and we take it very seriously.
Yeah. Now, we're here in Sydney for the launch of your newest data centre, and we know that the demand for high-performance computing is growing exponentially. Reports that electricity consumption from data centers is growing. I mean, we do have technology that's lowering that, but then you have to have the adoption cycle, and you've got to pull out the old tech and put in the new tech. But of course, we have the rise of artificial intelligence, machine learning, as it was called before the November 2022 launch of ChatGPT, and that, of course, Gen AI has just gone ballistic. Even the continued growth of the cryptocurrency market, and this is all set set to double by 2026, which is barely a year and a half away. So with this being OVHcloud's newest data center globally, what makes this data center or these servers within this data center so special and different?
This is the latest iteration of our water cooling technology. All of those new advancements and that you just mentioned is going to consume a lot of compute. That is a lot of data being processed, stored, and so forth, and that in turn generates a lot of heat.
Yeah.
That just puts more pressure on power, and those servers need to be cooled. They need to be operable at optimum temperatures. Our technology, the core of it, if you will, some of those chips, etc., that you mentioned, we actually have a heat sink, a block that is placed against that componentry that generates the heat. Water flows through that block and then goes off into to be cooled again and then recirculated back over that chip again. This is done on a per server basis with about a glass of water. So that is constantly recirculated. So as a result of not cooling the entire space, not cooling all of the air, we use a lot less power. As a result of recirculating that water, we use a lot less water. As a result of both of those elements, we put out a lot less carbon emissions. And then thirdly, and interestingly, because we're not having to cool the air, we simply don't need the amount of space around those servers as well. So what that means is we get a lot more density into the space as well. So it makes our whole cycle significantly more efficient. And that does get passed on to our customers.
Yeah, and I mean, space is the final frontier for data centers. You want to put in more equipment, but the traditional problem has been not enough space, too much heat being generated. But here you're very specifically cooling specific areas. And it's, the very simple analogy is the new water cool systems we hear about for gamers that, cool the chips. But this is on an industrial scale, spanning, I guess hundreds or even thousands of servers, depending on the size of your data center. And it's remarkable.
Well, that is absolutely the difference, right? There is many different things that are talked about at the moment, immersion cooling, but this is something that we've been doing at scale since 2003. So this is not at a individual server or one or a few type level. This is at an absolute industrial level, an entire DC.
So this is a closed loop system. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works and how this compares with the water usage of a traditional data center? And the one glass of water per server, obviously there's a lot more than one glass in the whole system. It's traveling over hundreds of servers. But yes. I have heard that from a different, another technology journalist was telling me the story that a traditional chat GPT requirement on some system that he was learning about was taking like a 600 ml bottle of water every time you did a chat GPT inquiry. I don't know how realistic that is, but the competition must be using millions of litres and you're using a much smaller amount.
So look, to answer that specifically, a Stanford study showed that a 1 megawatt data centre will consume 25 million litres of water in a year. So, and I think they're referring more so to traditional type evaporative cooling, which does consume vast amounts of water, and that is sent off as waste. But as you mentioned, yes, we're in a closed loop. So it is in fact that same, that exact same piece of water that is recirculated, cooled, and then passed over the server once again to keep it at its optimal temperature. And
was there a figure as to the amount of water that you use?
So there's one glass of water. So essentially, a glass of water will cool a server. Okay, so we don't constantly recirculate the one glass of water. It would be, 1,000 glasses of water cooling 1,000 servers. Okay, but that whole system is in a closed loop.
But we're talking hundreds or thousands of litres of water as opposed to 25 million litres, which is a huge reduction.
Yeah, correct indeed, and that is the major difference. That's right. There's simply not that consumption. It's on a closed loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is the only consumption would be as we connect or disconnect elements and sorting out those different airlocks. It's minuscule. It's litres, not 25 million litres.
And so, in general, what is the kind of cost reduction or cost saving that you've seen using this newest version, I guess maybe compared to the what you had in 2003 or the rest of the industry? I mean, one of the things that you're famous for is offering, very price competitive services compared to the rest of the industry.
Yeah, indeed, and that is, I think if we ask businesses about the resources that they're most concerned about, or most businesses nowadays, certainly have a CEO statement about, their sustainability targets and their carbon emissions, etc. But in boardrooms, there's also the responsibility of their finances. So, as a result of using less power, using less water, using less space, etc., we're able to be incredibly competitive. And from a performance and price perspective, we believe we really are the gold star. So, the traditional sense that being sustainable, you have to pay a premium for it.
Yeah, that used to be the case.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the logic prevails. We're using less of everything. We're able to pass that on to our customers, and that is, that's a real concern. Whether they're a large enterprise with their budgets and the responsibilities of their shareholders and boards, etc., or a small to medium business that they live hand to mouth. So they can make the sensible choice and also achieve whatever sustainability goals that they've got too. Sure. In fact, we've recently released a carbon calculator. So the individual customer themselves can know what their contribution is specifically from the services that we provide to them. So we're helping them achieve that third scope from a carbon emissions perspective.
Yeah, and they need to do their own reporting as well, so they need to know.
Absolutely, yeah.
And presumably this data center can host any type of processor, be it the AMD EPYC processors, the new MI300X accelerators, Intel's equivalents, or even NVIDIA's or Qualcomm's, anybody else's chip technologies too.
So more and more technology continues to arrive into this data center. As you've seen it today, it is a prelude, and we've got some of it, some of our servers in there, and those services, those products continue to grow weekly, monthly, etc. as they arrive. You got a sneak peek today.
Sure, but I mean, it's also what customers want to install as well, based on what you can provide to them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Another recent article I read that of those surveyed, 72% of the businesses surveyed already use AI in some way, and of those remaining 28%, 67% of those will expect to be utilising AI in the next couple of years. So this is very real, and it really is on our shoulders as data centre providers to lead the way in consuming less.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say to the previous point, I love competition. It makes everybody work harder. And I mean, you're opening on May 14. We're recording this a few days beforehand, but this is when we'll lift. And you must have customers lined up and ready to go.
We do indeed, yes, absolutely. So we've, as we expand, our customers expand. So very, very much so.
And I mean, as we were touring the room, there was a redundancy in place everywhere. I mean, this is obviously something that's been around for a long time. It's obviously quite standard, but I mean, downtime does happen. We've seen hack attacks, those sorts of things, nothing to do with you, of course. But presumably, the downtime has never been more minimised than it is today.
I think the industry as a whole delivers it incredibly well. You know, it is held to a very, very high standard, and it is, consumers, the end user, as in our
Well,
work
I was
life.
saying that for the young people today, instant gratification is not instant enough.
Correct. It's never instant enough. It is, when something doesn't go right, it's amazing how quick we are to complain, and you don't have to think that far back as to.
It took 6 months for a letter to get from Australia to England and back again, and now it's a millisecond. You know, I mean, email seems to have slowed down a bit. You know, Gmail used to be faster, but how many more people have email accounts? It's no surprise. They need more. They need to be using your service.
Well, indeed, that's right.
Now, I've heard, and you mentioned this before, I've heard people talking about data centers where the servers are immersed in liquid, but this is kind of the opposite scenario. I mean, you guys are piping water specifically across CPUs and fans and cooling systems, very specifically to optimize cooling, but those immersed data centers sort of have liquid everywhere. You're not doing that, but any sort of thoughts on these other approaches?
Well, as far as I know, no one's doing that at scale. So, look, it's interesting to to see these other developments happening. You know, we still, as effectively and as efficiently as we are able to operate, we still have a very, very large R&D department that continues to innovate, etc. But so far as I know, none of those technologies have happened at scale.
Yeah, and with that large R&D department, if there is any Moore's law to advanced cooling, you haven't reached it yet.
No, not at all. We continue to invest and innovate very much around this technology. We seem to be certainly leading the way in terms of our power consumption and water consumption, and we have many patents, etc., that protect this technology. We manufacture this technology ourselves, and so on. So really that gives us that capability to control all of that cycle and all of those things that are consumed outside of what gets consumed in a data center itself.
And you mentioned before, it's vertical integration, which gives you a lot of benefits. We've seen how that's helped Apple. And there's even elements that you've open sourced.
Yeah, just recently, that only a couple of weeks ago, we released some drawings, a couple of schematics on some componentry that we've made open source. So that is whoever wants to utilise those elements, they can do so. Those particularly technologies are done or built with readily available parts. So it's certainly something that the industry as a whole can pursue if they wish.
And before I ask you some final closing questions, is there anything else that we need to know about this data center or any of the other work that you've done in recent times that we should know about that we haven't already discussed?
Look, I think the message I'd like to get across is the way that we've invested in the region. We've had in the last 14 months 4 new data centres open up. Mumbai, that is our region, Singapore, and now this in Sydney opening next week. In between Singapore and Sydney, we opened another data centre in Toronto. What this is bringing here, if I focus on a Sydney perspective, is our sustainability. Using less power, water, carbon, etc. The way that we treat the sovereignty of that data. Customers can know that their data remains their data. We don't try and monetize any of that. And look, as a result of all of those efficiencies, they can get the best performance to price ratio from us. They don't need to make a sacrifice in order to be sustainable and meet their own goals.
Do you have any personal thoughts on the future? I mean, I know it's crystal ball stuff. I mean, I was just thinking with your name, Mayolo, you only live once, YOLO. Have you got any thoughts on how the future is going to, where we might be in 12 months or even by the end of the decade?
That is probably the toughest question to answer, and if we had been having this conversation in 2014, who would have thought that this was the case? AI, machine learning, such a huge part of the vernacular nowadays, and it really came out of sci-fi movies and became something that was being used at large 18 months. It was less than 2 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
18 months. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that's kind of when it hit the road. Look where we are now. So trying to predict what that looks like in 10 years' time is setting me up to not knowing. Yeah.
So my next question is to ask if you could please share a memory of your first computer. I always love to ask this question because everyone's answer is usually so different.
Oh, so my first computer I got in 1989, and in reality, I didn't know what to do with it. It was a very heavy laptop.
Yep.
No
internet back then.
No, not at all.
It was like a VCR without any tapes.
No, I didn't know what to do with it. But the thing that sticks with me about technology, I remember in the mid 90s, there was a technology report that came out called the Popcorn Report. It was produced by Lady Faye Popcorn, and she talked about the future. And at the time, she was talking about the internet. And they made these videos of, and the highlight video was the highlight video was a woman buying a dress, like on the computer.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember watching it at the time. Right, it just seemed ridiculous.
Yeah.
And look where we are now.
Yeah, I remember seeing a post on X from the 1950s, and they had like a television which was in sort of portrait format, and it was the front page of a newspaper. And they said, one day you'll have your newspaper on your TV, and it looks so, futuristic. And of course, we take all that for granted now.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, my second last question is to ask if you could please share some of the great advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
The advice I got, the one I give to my kids, is 3 pillars: kind, honest, and hardworking, in that order. So it's no good being honest if you're not being kind, and so forth. So I try and live that way. So yes, kind, honest, and hardworking.
So what is your final message to the viewers and the readers?
Well, to the viewers and the readers, I would ask that they, that they consider us, that they reach out and talk to one of the team. They've got, the sustainability goals, and this is their opportunity to not only achieve those sustainability goals, but do it in such a way that they're not paying a premium. So talk to one of our team, and and I think they'd be surprised by the outcome. Well,
Terry Mayolo, VP and General Manager for Asia Pacific at OVHcloud, thank you so much for your time, and I do hope we can speak again in the future.
Thanks, Alex. Great talking to you.
Bye-bye.